Hello everyone, it's Sarah here with your Enchanted Rose painting. Today we will need a canvas panel, our pencil, our paints and our little paint strip. We also need our paint brushes, our paper plates or something to mix colors on, and of course something to wash our brushes in. So let's get started. First thing, let's have our canvas panel portrait. That means it's taller than it is wide. And let's go ahead and make a nice little flower stem. We want this to be kind of roughly a quarter of the way up the bottom of the canvas. We want it to take up about half the canvas here. You can add some little spiky thorns on the side and some rose leaves. Their leaves are very spiky. You have a little line going in the middle. You can add one or two. You don't have to add leaves if you don't want to. I just wanted to make mine kind of fancy. And to make the rose, we're going to add two little lines coming off on an angle. We're going to make a nice large oval shape that we then connect down into the stem. We're going to start along these edges and we are going to make some petals. So we can make the outside ones first. We start by making some little blobs and kind of connecting them. And we want to make kind of a spiral of kind of these funky blob shapes, very skinny blobs. These will help make our inside petals. They kind of overlap and overlap until they spiral into the center. It's almost like making a puzzle, and we want to give them just a little bit of space. Now we want to add maybe one or two falling petals and then a couple laying on the ground beside the stem. I'm adding one falling off and then three laying on the ground. Petals are nice to make. They're just nice easy blobs with a little bit of a point, and I'm just very lightly drawing a flattened oval just so I know where I want my bottom of my jar to be. Just a little bit of a faint line. Alright, now it's time to paint. Let's grab our big paintbrush and our purple. So we're going to make a purple glow around the outside of our flower and our stem. So we want to be careful not to go over our lines. I've gone over my lines just a little bit, so I'll just correct that later. And we're going to feather the edges. That means we're going to make nice short brush strokes, and we're going to kind of flick our wrists and see how I have my brush strokes kind of coming off on an angle around my flower. It just kind of makes this nice glowy effect. We want to be using our big brush for most of this. It'll make our painting a bit more smooth. You want to kind of use the biggest brush you can for the space you're using. If you use a little brush to paint in all this much space, it's going to take you forever. And you're also going to end up with lots of globs. Now globs don't dry very fast. They can look very patchy later. And they can also use up a lot of paint. So again, we're making these nice short brush strokes all the way around. You almost want to pretend that there's a clock. And depending on if you're facing right towards the top of your canvas, you're going to go straight up like 12 o'clock. Or if you're on the side, it's going to go on an angle, maybe straight across. So if it's directly in the middle or, pointing towards 2 or 3. This just, again, helps create that nice glowy effect. And it's going to help us to blend our colors in later. And you can see how as I paint around this leaf, I start painting just along the side of the leaf, and then once I finished, I smooth the paint out so that it still goes in the same direction as the edges of my brush strokes. This just again helps to smooth out any globs, and it also helps create a nice, more cleaner finished look. So we also want to fill in around on the ground. And again, we want to go around all those petals. Now take your time when you're going around your details. My video is a bit sped up, so I'm actually working a lot faster than I really am. So next we're going to grab a few good globs of blue paint and we're going to mix it with some purple till we get something that's kind of in the middle between blue and purple. And we're going to start by creating a second area of glow around our nice purple here. And you can go right to the edge if you want. We're going to layer another color on later, so if you want to leave a bit of white around it, you can. I'm just painting in the whole thing. And again, I'm trying to match that feathery brush strokes I was doing earlier. You know, this time though, I'm going from the outside in, and I'll do some blending once I've filled in all of this area. Now the reason we mix in some purple is if we use just the straight blue, it has almost a greenish tone to it, so this just helps the colors match a bit more. Make sure you go all the way around. So once you finish, give your brush a good wash. And we're going to switch back to some purple for a minute, and we're just going to go over that edge between our blue and our purple with some fresh purple. It will blend a little bit, you know, you'll get some areas that'll start to go darker. Again, you just wash your paintbrush or you put some fresh purple on. This just helps to create a nice transition between these two colors. Can also take a clean, wet, slightly wet paintbrush and just feather it again a bit more. This will help to blend the colors. And again, as we blend, let's try to keep those brush strokes. We end up getting some really nice textures with this. So next we're going to mix a little bit of black into our dark purpley blue. We can also mix a bit more of that color if we're running really low. And we're just going to add it kind of along the edges and the corners. Again, keeping that nice angled brush stroke, we're going to feather it in just a little bit. This just helps to create that glow, so that purple is going to look really light, and then it goes from this light purple to this dark blacky blue. Alright, our background is done. It's time to paint our rose. So we're going to switch to a little brush, and we're going to fill in the space between all of our inner petals with straight red. I'm making my rose a pinkish red rose, so if you want to make it a different color, say you want it to be more of a lighter pink, maybe then do this part with a darker pink. You just want to do a darker shade of whatever you're going to do the petals with. And then I'm going to add a bit of a red outline on some of these outside petals. And I'm going to add a little bit of red to the ends of the petals, so kind of where they would start from the plant. And then I'm going to mix a pink. So I'm going to mix a bit of white to a bit more red, just because I want it to be a bit of a darker pink. Always grab your white first, then you don't have to clean your brush. And then I'm going to paint in my petals, and I'm going to blend it into that red. It just makes my petals look a little bit more fancy. You can make them all one color if you choose, but I like the look of this color change from a darker color to a lighter color on my petals. Just adds a bit of detail. Then I'm going to fill in all of my petals on my rose part. Now that we have some color on it, we can really see how making those kind of swirly interconnected blobs really helps to create the illusion of these detailed petals. I'm going to make it a little bit darker shade, and I'm just going to blend it onto my petals on the outside edges and that, just to give a bit more detail. Next, I'm going to paint in my stem. I'm going to add a little bit of a base to the petals, just where it attaches. Now I'm just using straight green. If you want to use a different shade of green, you can. You can make different shades by mixing in white or yellow or blue. Can experiment. I just wanted to go with straight green because I actually really like this shade of green. I'm going to fill in my stem and my leaves. Going to mix a little bit with some of my darker blue, And I'm going to use that just to add some detail lines onto my leaves, just for a little bit of a pattern. And then I'm going to paint in the thorns with brown. Again, you can use a different color or you can use a different shade. If you want to experiment with some color mixing, this is definitely a project to do that with. And once we finish painting in our thorns, we're actually going to leave our painting for a little bit. We want it to dry. We want that background to be fully dry before we do our jar. So leave it for a little bit and come back. So check to make sure your background is dry. Grab your little brush and your white paint. So we're going to make a jar around a rose. This is called a cloche jar or a cloche. It's just basically almost like a big bell that you place over something, and it's made out of glass. It has a little handle on top. It's very fancy looking. I'm going to start by just making the outline of our jar. So you almost want to picture a very big U that maybe flares out a little bit at the bottom, maybe not, depending on how you want it to look. We can give it some shine, so we can make some little highlights, little highlight lines along the edge. And we'll make a little bottom. We're not going to necessarily connect it straight to the sides. Just gives it a little bit of dimension. And we'll add a little bit of a line along the background. We want it to be kind of curvy. We'll add a little top. Again, we're not going to fully connect it, and we'll give it a little highlight. I'm going to add some little dots of sparkles just to kind of show its magic. This is a little extra step. If you don't want to add these little dots, you don't have to. I just wanted to make some magical sparkles to my painting. You can also add up a little bit more white paint on top of some of the lines if you want some of them to be a bit more opaque, so less of the background coming through. You can also add couple little bonus highlights on the other side if you want. Alright, that's it for this painting. Thanks for painting with me today, guys. I will see you next time with a new painting. Bye-bye.